Well, welcome to this week's edition of The View from the Pew. You know, this week we might want to call this The View from the Piano Bench. Because you don't usually sit in a pew, at least not for most of the worship service.
Right.
Our guest today is Tanya Stojanovic, who is our Director of Contemporary Worship here at Oak Hills. Well known to all of you. And what a privilege to get to sit down and talk with you, Tanya, a little bit in the middle of your busy schedule.
Always fun to talk with you.
Good. So one question I have for you as we get started has to do with kind of your evolving role with leading in worship. Obviously, the way we're currently worshiping is limited. And you've been asked to go from leading us in song to becoming the voice of the congregation in worship. And as we've talked, I know you've kind of had evolving feelings about that role and what it means and how to approach it. So I'm just wondering how you're doing with that and what that's been like for you to sit up here and kind of worship vocally on behalf of the whole congregation.
I feel like from the get-go in 2020, we've had to negotiate differently what church means for us, what our walk with God means for us, and how that looks.
Yeah.
And then as a musician, how to make it sound beautiful and musical and have technology developing in our church that was never there before.
Yep.
That was all, and when for me to step forward and go, you know what, this just sounds bad. And when to let it go ahead and sound bad and move on.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think we've had to deal with, mic issues that we've never had to deal with, and it feels different when our congregation is on the other side of the screen instead of out here live.
Right.
It doesn't feel like a loose, flexible situation. It feels very tight.
Yep.
You have to get it perfect the first time, or what are we going to do? So all of those things, I guess, is a growing thing. But recently I went from just the thought of being the only voice, as you know, was traumatic for me.
Yeah.
When I first heard of it, I cried. I'm not a soloist. I never wanted to use my voice as a soloist. I've always felt like the voice for me is an add-on to my pianistic skills.
Yeah.
So to now be the only voice means this voice better sound good. So on the way to church now, I'm all alone in the car early in the morning doing my vocal exercises, asking the Lord, please just keep me on pitch. And anything above that, if your presence is here and it sounds a little extra like angels are singing with me, that would be brilliant too. But just keep me on pitch. Anyway, so I feel I've had to, renegotiate. I'm a soloist now.
Yeah.
I've always sung and played for the Lord.
Yeah.
And for His glory.
Yeah.
But yes, so for non-musicians, a soloist gets to do whatever they want, whenever they want. So timing is less of an issue. When you lead a congregation, you have to keep things tight. You have to make things, you have to introduce things well, you have to, lead. You have to say, okay, and now come this way, and now we're going this way, and now we're slowing down, and now we're speeding up.
Yeah.
As a soloist, you don't have to do that. You're messing with no one else. Unfortunately, Jeremy has to follow that when he helps out with the guitar. And I love having that extra volume, extra addition to the music. So now I've evolved into a soloist, and I try and spend a little extra time even at home with myself, evaluating myself. Okay, where do you want to go with this? How, Lord, do you want this to sound? Do you want this a faster or a slower tempo? I guess it's enriched me. And when I first thought I would break down in tears and cry on my first service, instead, the minute I started playing The Lord Is So Gracious, I felt like it was just him and I.
Yeah.
I was just playing for my Lord and Savior in the throne room, where I like to envision myself in anyway. There were just a lot less people singing with me.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. You shared with me on Sunday that there's in some ways a silver lining, and that is that sense of this is for an audience of one.
yes.
And even to invite us, even though we're not singing, to be with you in spirit before God, and to be kind of offering our hearts as you're offering your voice.
Yeah.
I think maybe that some of the challenges of this time have helped us think more carefully about what worship is and what matters in worship when a lot of the extraneous pieces have fallen away. Hey, nothing can stop us from praising God in our hearts and spirits. And so it's been neat to see you kind of roll with the punches. So thank you.
Thank you.
I think you do a beautiful job, in my humble opinion. So
Thank you.
feel good about the way you've adapted to this.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So we've been moving through the Sermon on the Mount, and I told the second service on Sunday, I keep waiting for a nice, easy passage, no controversy, something simple, and we keep getting heavy-hitting scriptures.
Yeah.
And this past Sunday, really in a wonderful providential way, we were challenged by Jesus not to judge, lest we be judged. Matthew 7. Let me just read the few verses that we looked at on Sunday, and then I'll ask you a couple questions to kind of reflect on that. Well-known words from Jesus. Do not judge so that you may not be judged. For with the judgment you make, you will be judged, and the measure you give will be the measure you get. Why do you see the speck in your neighbor's eye, but do not notice the log in your own eye? Or how can you say to your neighbor, let me take the speck out of your eye, while the log is in your own eye? You hypocrite. First take the log out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to take the speck out of your neighbor's eye. This has been a season in our culture, our society, in which the temptation to point fingers of judgment, I think, has grown far beyond what we're sort of accustomed to. And I'm wondering, Tanya, for you, what's that been like, and how, as you hear these words of Jesus, how do you find yourself wrestling through this challenge not to judge?
So I've learned, and I guess I surprise myself every so often by relearning that I'm a fighter type. I want something to fight. I get this angst, this agra up in me that wants to, lash out and do something. Especially this last year. What can I do?
Yeah.
Well, you can sit in your home and do nothing. I'm going to go walk the dog.
Yeah.
That's my, at least I can do one thing for my family. And we're going to get outside and enjoy the outdoors, whether it's going to, kill us or not.
Yeah, right. Ooh.
So when, all this politics come up and then the politicking about health stuff is so just it makes me sick, and it makes me want to stand up and do something, even to the degree when we were at the beach 2 weekends ago that you let me take off today.
Yeah.
I spent a whole evening deleting all of Amazon's save and subscribe. I have groceries like because Sophia drinks goat milk. So
Okay.
they have a great deal on goat milk concentrate, and we buy that. And if they're going to deliver that, why not deliver the dog food? Why not deliver this and this and this? So
Yeah.
I went through and deleted all of that because I wasn't going to use Amazon anymore. Because of Bezos and stuff like that.
Sure.
In fact, in your sermon this Sunday, I
Yeah.
looked him up during second service.
It's nice to know what you do during my sermons.
I know, yeah. First sermon, I mostly pay attention, if Sophia lets me. And I thought, this guy that I was ready to judge and cut out from my life something that really is quite helpful. My students use Amazon. I can send a link and say, order this book, and it's easy. And it provides me with groceries and essentials that I don't have to go out and buy. It's right there on my front doorstep. I mean, how amazing is that? We never thought that would come about.
Right.
But because of his, decisions and what I thought he was doing politically, I didn't like.
Yeah.
I was going to start, that was going to be my first step. And then I was going to get on Facebook and I was going to ream him and Twitter and Facebook and see how far I could go before they all cut me out.
Yeah.
Not that I tweet, but, and then the Lord, maybe it wasn't the Lord, maybe it was just my brain saying, aren't you on vacation? Are you going to fight the world on vacation?
Yeah.
What a great way to spend vacation.
Just really uplifting.
Yeah. So I backed off, and during your sermon, the Lord brought that up. Hey, this Bezos guy, what is he about? Yeah. He doesn't look amazing. He is a billionaire.
Yeah.
A billionaire.
Yeah.
And he looks like Joe Schmo. He has got a little eye that's a little smaller than the other eye. And I looked at his picture and I was like,
yeah.
He's not much to get mad at, Lord.
Yeah, interesting.
Maybe I should have some compassion on this man.
Yeah.
Maybe he doesn't have too many people praying for him.
Wow. Yeah. Interesting.
So, your sermon on watch out how you judge others lest ye be judged.
Yeah.
I also have told you, it reminds me a few scriptures down that you're going to be preaching on this Sunday about do unto others as you would have do unto you. It's amazing. And you said, the Sermon on the Mount likes to spin itself back on itself over and over again.
Yep.
Jesus says, stop. Before you act, before you say anything, how do you want me to talk to you? How do you want me to act towards you?
Yep.
And then when you've got that in mind, what you want me to do with you, then do that to the person that really ticks you off. Do that to someone you don't think is quite right and towing the line right. So I don't know if that helps anyone in hearing what I think, but...
That's a great example. This is a tension that I wrestle with, the idea that on the one hand, we're not to judge. On the other hand, you talked about your instinct to want to fight what's worth fighting, right?
Yeah.
And to stand up for some things. And I actually think that that's a good and godly impulse. The question is, what is your tactic? Right? And what are you fighting?
Right.
And for you to go from saying, I'm going to smear Jeff Bezos on Facebook, to I'm going to fight in prayer over him. Because who knows what God's doing with that guy?
Right.
It's still fighting the good fight, but it's a different strategy, and it kind of leaves the results in God's hands. And I think a lot of people, in their zeal to fight injustice or whatever it might be, get caught in a trap of judgment and bitterness. And the solution is not to suddenly stop fighting evil. It's to figure out, what does it mean to fight evil? I mean, I think about Corrie ten Boom, who I talked about in the sermon, who fought against the evil of Nazi Germany by sheltering Jews, and then by praying for her guards and founding a rehabilitation home for former Nazis. So she was fighting evil, but she wasn't fighting Nazis per se. She was fighting on God's side, if we could put it that way. And there's something really powerful about it's different from judging, but it doesn't mean you're being passive in the face of what's wrong. So,
yeah, Jesus tells us, we wrestle not against flesh and blood.
Right. Yep.
Flesh and blood he made, he loved. It's in the image of him.
Yeah. Yeah.
We wrestle against the principalities, the little demons that sit and we actually listen to.
Yeah.
Those are the ones we got to wrestle against because some people have said, hey, this voice sounds great.
Yep.
I like how it sounds.
Right. Yeah.
I'm going to buy into everything this little voice tells me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you can't slap them upside the head.
That's right.
It'd
But
be
you can
really
pray.
good if you could just knock that demon off their shoulder, though.
Well, I think there is power. And actually, this
Yes.
Sunday, we're going to be talking about the power of prayer, which is interesting, the order in which Jesus gives us these teachings. Where do you want to focus your energy? Maybe not on picking apart the people around you, but on fighting the powers and principalities, which happens on our knees. So,
Yeah. That's hard.
That is hard. Yeah, yeah. As you look ahead to 2021, Tanya, what are your hopes and what are your prayers going forward with the state of the world? And I know your own precious family. You have a little beautiful daughter coming up into this world, and she's just full of life and light and happiness. And what are you kind of asking God for, maybe I could say, in the coming year?
Wisdom.
Yeah.
How to lead her in the right direction with preschool. That's kind of, breaking my heart because to have to give her up already at 4.
It's tough.
I enjoy having her around even when she cries. She goes through quite the crying stages. We cry all the way home from the park half the time because she had to say goodbye and she's so tired. And miserable and needing her bed. She'll even tell me, I need the bed. Well, you got to go home to the bed in order to lay down. So, she's just amazing and delightful. And
Wisdom.
wow, it's just wisdom, I think. And continuing to be the woman of God has called me to be. If I can make a difference and change something in the world, great. If I just smile at the homeless guy and say hi because he told me he had no kids, how sad. That means you have no one that's going to outlive you.
Right.
So we'll say hi. And if that means we're doing something helpful to the universe, to God's plan, then great. I'd like something bigger. I'd like to punch something bigger, but
okay.
Doesn't sound very deep.
Well,
Doesn't sound very changeful.
It sounds wonderful though, in that you bloom where you're planted, right? And you start with what God's given you, which is this daughter and this kind of family life, and who knows what God's going to make of those simple acts of faithfulness. So, good deal. Did you have other thoughts that you wanted to share while we're talking?
I had all sorts, like what I'd like to say to you all when I'm up there playing.
Yeah, tell us. Maybe it's not there in your brain right now.
So I've talked to Jeremy, Pastor Jeremy, about having some music playing during the service that the congregation can just have their own personal spiritual time with God. You can talk to him. I think it's more rewarding to just be quiet and listen for him to talk to you. The Friends Church? They tend to have a quiet time like that. And I used to do this in other churches I've worked at. And so anyway, that's one new thing we're trying out and doing, and that's the background of that. I'd like to tell you all that I really wish you could sing with me. And Pastor Jeremy has said how he'd love to sing. And it really does, break our hearts to say, hum or sing it in your head. And it's not my show. Heaven forbid. It's never been my show. So, and we're going to get through this. And we're going to be singing as loud as possible when we do get a chance to sing. So, and we'll never ever take this for granted.
Tell you what.
I did want to say one thing, if I had a chance to say anything to our church. I used to say this model of church is broken. And it took me a whole entire year to realize this is my one chance to break out of this model, and that it's not about Pastor Jeremy to fix things for our church. It's about us fixing things with each other. If we want a Bible study, call your friends up here at church and have a Bible study. If you need a prayer, you don't even have to call Pastor Jeremy. Sunday night, Sarah said, Sunday morning, texted us and said, can you pray? And we prayed Sunday night. It took 15 minutes, and we went through like 10 points. Bam, bam, bam. You just have to like put one step forward, and you will find probably plenty of people are ready and willing and able to come alongside you and do that with you. And it has nothing to do with Pastor Jeremy anymore. Yet we are still part of the church, and that is essentially what church is.
Yeah, that's the wonderful thing about the way the church is designed, is that there are many gifts in the body. And when the church is healthy, we freely exercise those gifts. And so that's a great word of encouragement. To, if God's leading you somewhere, maybe he's leading other people too. And don't be shy about it. Good word. Okay.
That's it.
Well, thanks, Tanya. Appreciate you spending this time.
Thank you.
All right.